G'day, I am Alistair Christie, and in this video we are going to make cider. That's alcoholic cider, or hard cider as it's known in the US. And the process of doing that can actually be quite complicated. Picking apples, chopping them up, mashing them, pressing them, extracting the juice. All of that is quite complicated. Fortunately, there are people out there who will do it for you and put it in these nice convenient bottles. Now, the magic words you need to look for when purchasing apple juice is no preservatives. We need no preservatives so that when we add our yeast, and this yeast is just standard sort of activated dried yeast. It's a bread maker's yeast, and we'll use that. In fact, it expired last week, but I'm sure it will still be okay. And we're going to add that to our apple juice, and the yeast will multiply and convert the sugars in the apple juice into alcohol. So let's go ahead and do that. So our first step is to add our yeast to the cider. So I'm just going to take the lid off our bottle, and I'm just going to put a teaspoon in, or thereabouts, which should be enough, and put the lid back on that and give it a bit of a shake. Just to mix that yeast in. Now, normally I would, at this point, I might actually add some wine nutrient or something like that. I've heard adding raisins is also a possibility, just to give the yeast a bit more food and some of the minerals that it needs. Normally I'd put a bit of water in an airlock and put that in the top, and that would be done. But that's kind of a specialist piece of equipment. You need to go to a brew shop or buy one on the internet or something like that. But instead I have a balloon. Now the first thing we want to do, we're going to attach the balloon to the top, but we want to poke a hole in the top of the balloon, like that, which I've done with a drawing pin. I'm just going a little bit further to make sure. So that's done. And we also, it's a good idea to sterilise all your equipment. I was a bit lazy with the spoon, but anyway. So I'm just going to throw that into a cup and put some boiling water in, and I'll just kind of mix that around a little bit. And probably if I was feeling really enthusiastic, I would get a funnel and pour a bit in there. But anyway, so we'll make sure that it's had a bit of heat through it, and take it out. Get rid of the water inside it, and then we want to take put our balloon over the top. Now, last time I did this, it required 2 attempts. I had to use a second balloon. But let's see if we can do this in one go. And that's attached. So what will happen, what the balloon does is allow the carbon dioxide out through the tiny hole that we put in it, but no air can get back in, because oxygen's bad. It creates off tastes and what have you in our cider. So that will push out the little bit of oxygen that is in the top, because the air is heavier than carbon dioxide, and out that'll come through the little hole. It will inflate a little bit, and we leave that for probably about 10 days, 2 weeks at the tops, depending on how warm sort of room temperature is. And I'm just going to put that on a shelf and leave that for a few weeks. And then the next stage is to bottle it.
After a few days, our cider in progress should look a bit more like this. We'll see that on the top of the balloon there was a bit of an eruption. There's a bit of foam that occurred when it was sort of bubbling most vigorously and that are erupted from the top. And we can see, if we zoom in real close, lots of little bubbles appearing at the surface and bubbling up through our liquid, which is a good sign. Also note that it's a lot more opaque than it was, so it was quite clear. Now we can't see through it. I think that'll clear up a bit once it stops fermenting and things settle down a bit, and everything settles to the bottom of the vessel. So that's our cider in progress.
So here's one that was prepared earlier. This has been fermenting for about 3 weeks, probably finished fermenting after about 10 days, and it's just been sitting there ever since. It's probably lost a lot of its fizz, but we'll bottle it, but not after sampling it. And it's quite clear, and the sediment is all sitting at the bottom. So we're just going to pour it into the bottles. A racking cane is a much better way of doing it, but this is a nice easy method of bottling. So let's have a look at that. So let's whip this balloon off. So that came off nice and easily. And we'll take a sample. It's a turkey baster. It's been sterilised with boiling water. Nothing particularly sophisticated there. You can use other sterilisers that you can get from brew shops and things like that, or a little bit of bleach. Not quite a weak concentration. Look up on the internet how strong to make it. I've just used boiling water because it's kind of the easiest. So let's take a sample, and I'll take a sip of this. It does indeed taste like cider. It's fairly dry, none too exciting, but quite drinkable. Our next step is to get the cider into bottles, and to do that we're just going to use a funnel, also sterilised with boiling water. So I'm just going to put that in there. Actually, I won't do that one first because this one's a little bit unstable. And so I'm just going to pick up the bottle of cider and start pouring. Now, a racking cane is a much better solution for this, or just a piece of tube, and sort of gravity feeding it into it, because it won't mix as much air in with the cider. But we're doing a very simple brew, so sort of using the simplest method possible. So that's almost one bottle. Now, basically I don't want to stop pouring because I don't want to mix up the sediment. So what I'm trying to do is avoiding sloshing the liquid backwards and forwards, and so that the sediment remains in the bottom of our fermenting vessel. And I can see just a little bit of sediment mixing in now, but not very much. So if you leave your cider for quite a while, the sediment will compact down quite nicely at the bottom. Oops. A little bit more on this one. We'll leave a bit of an air gap. And I'm just going to let that overflow a bit. And we're done. So, as you can see, there's sediment at the bottom, and if you mix it up too much, you'll get a yeasty taste, which is somewhat unpleasant. So that's our 3 litres of cider. Now we're actually going to add a little bit of sugar to this. What that'll do is, and I'll just put caps on them for now. What that'll do is allow some more fermentation to occur, but there's nowhere for the carbon dioxide to escape to, so it dissolves in the solution, and thus we have carbonated cider. So we'll do that next. Now the sugar I'm going to add is caster sugar, which is a fine grained sugar, so it'll dissolve nice and readily in the liquid. And these are 1.5 litres, so I'm going to add 2 teaspoons. So it's usually a teaspoon per 750 mils, approximately. Don't get too hung up. So I'm just going to put it on this piece of foil. And take the cap off. Now, if your cider is still a bit fizzy, you've got to be really quick with getting the cap back on because it can overflow. So I'm just going to pinch the end and pour that in. You can also use, and I've spilled a little bit of it, also use a funnel, of course. I just find this method to be a bit easier. One and 2 teaspoons. Squeeze the top. Kind of fold that in half. And pour that in. And squeeze that on. In fact, what I might do, just squeeze that a little bit and squeeze out as much of the air as I can. It'll expand again as the sugar dissolves, and you can see it bubbling up from the sugar already. So we're getting, make sure that it's nice and tight. And that's our cider bottled. Keep it that way for a couple of weeks, and then it's ready to drink. Now, because we've added sugar again, there'll be some sediment in the bottle, so when you pour it, you want to pour it into a jug or something like that, and then leaving a little bit in the bottom, and then pour it into glasses. So that's making cider, beginning to end. I hope you found it useful.